We all want to win. We all want to rise, to succeed, to feel like we're in control of our lives. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Wanting it isn't enough. You can wish for it, dream about it, visualize it, even post quotes about it, but none of that will build you. What will? Discipline. Because motivation is a spark, but discipline is the structure. It's the architect of your habits, your thought, your responses, and eventually your destiny. There's a misconception that success is fueled by a constant stream of motivation. We see people waking up early, dominating their day, achieving seemingly impossible goals, and assume they must be driven by some internal fire that never goes out. That's not the truth. Motivation is unreliable. It's emotional. It's inconsistent. It comes and goes based on mood, environment, and energy. And if your actions are dependent on whether or not you feel motivated, then your performance will always be fragile and unpredictable. Discipline, however different force, is a complete emotional. It's structural. It's not based on how you feel. It's based on what you decide. And that's the key. Discipline doesn't ask you to feel like doing something. It just asks you to do it. It's the invisible framework that supports your efforts when your mood doesn't. It's the system that keeps you aligned with your goals when inspiration takes a back seat. And the people who succeed in the long run are not the ones who always feel ready, energized, or excited. They're the ones who have learned how to show up even when they don't. Think about any worthwhile, a business you want to build, a degree you want to earn, a skill you want to master, a relationship you want to nurture. Every one of those requires consistent action over time. But there will be days when you're tired, when you're distracted, when things don't go your way. There will be days when the voices in your head tell you it's pointless, when results don't match your effort, when quitting feels easier than pushing forward. And on those days, you'll discover whether your actions were built on motivation or discipline. Discipline needs the perfect environment. It doesn't need good weather or good moods or good news. It thrives in silence. It thrives in routine. It thrives in the parts of your life that no one else sees. Waking up early to study while the world sleeps. Showing up to the gym after a long day at work. Sticking to your values when it's easier to compromise. Saying no to the quick rewards so you can stay focused on the long-term outcome. Discipline is the quiet force behind every high achiever. It's the uncelebrated, often invisible effort that makes the visible success possible. What's more, discipline creates momentum. It compounds. The first few steps are always the hardest. But when you get up and act, despite how you feel, you start to create a rhythm. That rhythm creates a sense of progress, and that progress starts to feed motivation. It's a loop, but it begins with discipline. Discipline isn't the result of motivation. It's the cause of it. And when people talk about getting back on track, what they're really saying is, I need to return to discipline. Because without it, even the strongest motivation dies out quickly. Many people waste time searching for motivation. They scroll through social media, watch videos, listen to podcasts, trying to find that spark. But that spark is not the fire. It's the match. And if you don't have the structure, the wood, the kindling, that fire won't last more than a few minutes. Discipline is what gives your spark something to ignite. It's what turns a moment of inspiration into months and years of progress. And without it, you're always starting over. You get excited, you start something new, and then life happens. You stop, and we try again. That cycle breaks only when discipline takes over. The reason discipline is so powerful is that it doesn't rely on perfect circumstances. You don't need to feel confident to act with discipline. You don't need to feel brave to act with discipline. You need to commit. And when that commitment is strong enough, it will override your excuses. It will quiet your doubts. It will anchor you in the process even when the outcome is unclear. Because discipline isn't just about doing something. It's about becoming someone. Someone who follows through, who shows up. Someone who doesn't abandon themselves when life gets hard. Discipline also teaches you the art of repetition. It's not glamorous. It's not exciting, but repetition is the mother of mastery. The greatest performers in any field are not those who practiced the most advanced techniques, but those who mastered the basics through relentless repetition. That kind of repetition is born from discipline. It's the ability to do something over and over again without getting bored, without needing praise, without chasing novelty. Discipline makes the mundane meaningful. It turns ordinary effort into extraordinary outcomes, not because the effort is special, because it's consistent. A common misunderstanding about people who win consistently, whether in business, sports, or personal development, is the belief that they were somehow born with something special. A sharper instinct, a deeper fire, a more ambitious soul. What we often forget is that mindsets aren't inherited. They're not found in a moment of clarity or discovered during a stroke of luck. Winning mindsets are constructed deliberately, intentionally, and always through adversity. You don't discover a mindset that wins. You design one. Think about a building. No skyscraper ever rose into the sky by accident as a blueprint. Big idea turned into a design. Then brick by brick, It was constructed with purpose. The same is true of your winner. If you want to think like a winner, you can't hope to find that mindset one day while scrolling through a motivational video or reading a powerful quote. You plan, build it, you work at it, you discipline it, and most importantly, you reinforce it every day through your actions. A winning mindset starts with clarity. You have to know what you stand for, what your values are, and where you're headed. If you don't know what you're aiming at, you'll never know if you're on target. Clarity is the foundation of design. It's not enough to say. I want enough to say. Want to be successful. What does success mean to you? Does it look like? What does it require of you? Without a clear picture, you're just reacting to life rather than building your place in it. But even clarity isn't enough. The next layer is commitment. And that commitment has to be stronger than your mood. You have to decide personally. You're consciously think you act like to become long before it feels natural. This is the heart of designing a mindset. It's choosing beliefs before the world gives you results. It's choosing discipline over ease, growth over comfort, purpose over popularity. It's building mental scaffolding to support your goals, even on the days when those goals feel out of reach. Designing a mindset also means choosing your environment. You can't plant a seed and expect it to thrive in toxic soil. The people you surround yourself with, the content you consume, the habits that you repeat, these are the conditions of your mental architecture. If you're trying to fit in while constantly comparing yourself to others, you're designing weakness. If you're trying to grow discipline while hanging around people who excuse mediocrity, you're building a mindset that folds under pressure. The blueprint of your mind is shaped not just by your surroundings. One of the most overlooked elements in designing a winning mindset is repetition. Not just doing things once or twice when you feel good, but over and over again it becomes who you are. Winners aren't made by occasional excellence. They're made by intentional consistency. And repetition without purpose is just routine. Repetition with intention is transformation. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And the most powerful system you can ever design is the one that governs how you think. And here's the reality: designing a mindset isn't easy. It means confronting parts of yourself that are holding you back. It means rewriting internal scripts that were written by fear, doubt, or past failures. It means replacing comfort with challenge and replacing ease with effort. The process is uncomfortable because you're not just changing what you think. You're changing how, not just improving what you do. You're improving how you see the world, how you see opportunity. That's not a discovery. That's a construction. It also requires patience. In the same way a builder doesn't rush foundation, if they want the structure to last, you rush the development of a mindset. You can't wake up one day and expect to be mentally unshakable. But you can wake up every day and work toward it. And if you do that long enough, something extraordinary happens. The mindset felt form is familiar becomes that once felt forced become natural. The beliefs that once needed effort to sustain become your default. That's the power of design. It transforms something external into something internal. Designing a winning mindset also means engineering how you deal with failure, because failure will happen. It's not optional, but how you interpret it is everything. People with a reactive mindset see failure as a reflection of their worth. People with a design mindset see failure as feedback. They don't internalize setbacks. They extract wisdom from them. They don't crumble when something breaks. They adjust and break. They adjust and rebuild. That ability to adapt with losing purpose is the mark of a mind that wasn't born lucky but built strong. Pressure is not a sign that something is wrong. Pressure is a part of the process. It's the natural friction of life when you push against limitations, when you pursue something that matters, when you choose growth over stagnation. And in those high pressure moments, when deadlines loom, expectations rise, and uncertainty multiplies, what determines your outcome isn't talent, intelligence, or luck. It's control. The ability to hold steady when the world shakes. And the only way to gain that control is through discipline. Most people try to manage pressure with emotion. They try to outrun fear, overpower anxiety, or suppress frustration. But emotion is unstable. It fluctuates. It reacts. And the moment you allow emotion to take the driver's seat in a moment of pressure, you lose your ability to lead yourself. Emotion is natural, but it's not meant to govern your decisions. Discipline is what steps in and says, this is what we do now. Even when your mind is screaming, I don't want to. It's not cold or robotic. It's focused. It's deliberate. It's grounded in clarity when emotion tries to pull you into chaos. Emotional control is not about numbing yourself. It's about navigating with intention, and that ability doesn't show up magically in the heat of the moment. It's trained. It's built long before the pressure arrives. When you practice discipline, when you practice the same time sticking get up events, holding to your commitments, holding yourself accountable, you're not just building productivity. You're not conditioning your nervous system to stay posed. You're rehearsing calmness. You're wiring your mind to respond instead of react. So when life throws you into a storm, you're not overwhelmed by the practice standing still win. Press standing still in the wheels, what was already true. about your preparation. That's why some people collapse under pressure while others rise. It's not one had less fear than the other. It's because one had more discipline. One had trained their mind to focus on the controllable instead of spiraling into the uncontrollable. In sports, in business, in life, the highest performers don't operate without pressure. They've simply made peace with it. And that peace comes from knowing they've trained their minds to lead, not follow in difficult moments. Imagine walking into a critical meeting where everything depends on your performance. Your voice starts to shake, your palms begin to sweat, your heart races. In that moment, discipline is what reminds you to breathe, to speak slowly, to stay present. You don't need to feel confident. You need to act with composure. And if trained for this moment, and if you've rehearsed difficult conversations, if you've studied your material, if you've put in the reps, then your discipline carries you through what emotion would otherwise destroy. Discipline is the internal structure that emotion can lean on. When fear tries to take over, disciplining of your preparation reminds you. When anger flares, discipline reminds you of your values. When doubt creeps in, discipline reminds of your progress. And these reminders aren't accidental. They're a product of the work you've done beforehand. You've chosen to live intentionally. You've chosen to think before you act. You've chosen to prepare when it wasn't convenient. That's what gives you strength when others freeze. One of the most powerful aspects of emotional control is the space between stimulus and response. In that space is your freedom, your power. Undisciplined minds react immediately. They say what they regret. They make choices they can't take back. They lash out, or discipline, give up, or mind pauses. It recognizes the emotion. It honors it. But it doesn't surrender to it. It chooses the next step based on principle, not that pause. That 1 second of awareness is what separates those who crumble from those who stay composed. And it's not just about pressure in dramatic moments. Emotional control through discipline shows up in everyday life. It's the parent who stays patient when their child acts out. It's the leader who stays calm when the team is panicking. It's the athlete who refocuses after a mistake of spiraling into self-doubt. These are all quiet moments of leadership, of strength, of resilience, and every one of them is made possible by discipline. You build this control not by avoiding discomfort, but by training in it. Each time you sit with frustration instead of venting it, each time you resist a reactive impulse, each time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, you are teaching your mind how to stay strong under pressure. You are creating a system of self-governance, a system that doesn't depend on external validation, emotional spikes, or perfect conditions. A system that holds you steady so you can think clearly, lead boldly, and act wisely no matter the circumstances. We often think identity is something we find, like a hidden weight in truth be uncovered. But identity isn't found. It's formed. It's shaped not by the moments when things are easy, but by the moments when they are not. And it's not shaped all at once. It's shaped gradually, subtly, almost invisibly, through consistency, through the things you do over and over, especially when no one is watching. That's where identity is molded, not by the intensity of what you do once, but by the integrity of what you do repeatedly. It's tempting to believe that big achievements come from bursts of effort, that you become successful by doing something heroic or impressive or revolutionary. But that's a myth of growth. Real success and real identity are forged in the ordinary, in the boring, in the quiet repetition of daily habits that no one applauds. Consistency is what makes greatness sustainable. Without it, talent wastes away. Without it, without goals stay ideas, your potential never becomes your reality. The most powerful part of consistency isn't what it does to the outside world. It's what it does to how you see yourself. Every time you follow through on a promise you made to yourself, you reinforce a belief: I am someone who shows up. I am someone who finishes a start. I am someone who honors their word. These small acts of discipline compound into deep trust. And that trust becomes confidence. Not confidence rooted in hyper-bravado, but in the solid experience of keeping your own standards. That's the identity you build through discipline. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who trains. You stop seeing effort as optional and start seeing it as your operating system. And over time, you begin to live with a sense of alignment. Your actions match your values. Your behavior matches your beliefs. And when your inner world and your outer world match, when who you are the same, what you do are the same, then you experience true clarity. But here's the hard part: consistency is hard to measure in the short term. It often doesn't come with quick wins or instant results. You might go to the gym for a month and see no visible change. You might write every day and feel like your voice still isn't strong every night, and study will feel like you're struggling. And this is where most people quit. Not because the goal is impossible, but because they can't tolerate the silence between the effort and the result. Consistency demands that you trust the process even when the progress is invisible. It requires that you believe in the destination your direction feels far away. And that's in that space, in the waiting, in the unglamorous, in the mundane, that identity is being built. Every time you keep going, even without a reward, you are telling yourself something important. My commitment is stronger than my circumstances. There's also a deeper psychological shift that happens with consistency. It rewires your perception of effort. What once felt like resistance becomes routine. What once felt hard becomes normal. You don't stop feeling discomfort, but you stop being ruled by it. And that mental shift, from struggle to standard, is what unlocks new levels of performance. When waking up early becomes part of your identity, you no longer need motivation to do it. When taking responsibility becomes your default, you don't wait for others to lead. You just do it because that's who you are now. Consistency is also what builds resilience, because the more consistently you show up, the more data your brain collects about your own capacity. You start to see patterns in your growth. You start to trust your own effort. And that trust becomes a kind of armor. So when setbacks happen, and they always do, you don't panic. You don't spiral. You don't quit. You say, I've been here before. I've worked through worse. I know how to keep going. That knowledge doesn't come from books or speeches. It comes from experience, from the reps, from the hours no one applauded. This is the kind of identity that doesn't need validation from the outside because it's not built on outcomes. It's built on effort. And effort is always within your control. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. Not once, not occasionally, but relentlessly. And when you live this way long enough, identity becomes inevitable. It stops being something you try to create and becomes something you naturally embody. You don't have to remind yourself who you are. You simply act in alignment with it. We live in a world obsessed with the immediate. Quick results. Instant gratification is no longer a luxury. It's an expectation. We're conditioned to believe that if something doesn't happen fast, it's not working. If a goal doesn't show results quickly, we must be doing it wrong. But long-term vision doesn't operate on the timeline of public validation. It doesn't show up in the first week or the first month. Long-term vision is slow, deliberate, patient, and it only becomes possible when it's anchored by discipline. Vision by itself is just imagination. It's potential. It's the dream of what could be. And there's nothing wrong with dreaming. In fact, vision is where all progress begins. But without the structure to support it, vision becomes a source of frustration instead of fulfillment. The bridge between the life you see in your mind and the one you actually live is discipline. It's the ability to take the abstract and make it actionable, to turn big ideas into daily habits, to focus not on what could happen someday, but what must happen today. Discipline keeps you aligned with your long-term vision, even when your short-term circumstances are discouraging, because not every day will feel inspiring. Some days you'll feel like giving up. Some weeks you'll question everything. But discipline reminds that vision isn't about how you feel in the moment. It's about what you believe is worth building over time. You can't see results right away, but you can always take action. And action, repeated with intention, eventually builds something meaningful. What often distracts people from their long-term vision is the allure of quick wins. We're constantly tempted to chase shortcuts, easier paths, faster results. But every shortcut has a hidden cost. It steals your focus from the long game. It trades depth for speed. It makes you reactive instead of intentional. And while shortcuts may feel productive, they often pull you further away from your real goal. Discipline is what protects you from those distractions. It's the internal compass that keeps you grounded in your purpose while everything around you demands urgency. Long-term vision requires delayed gratification. It's the willingness to sacrifice now for something better later. And that's not easy, because the rewards of discipline aren't always immediate. You might work for months without recognition. You might study for years without applause. You might invest time and energy into a project that no one understands yet, but that's the nature of anything lasting. What is easy to build usually crumbles fast. What is hard to build often stands the test of time. Discipline is what keeps you building when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when nothing seems to be working. It also helps you make decisions differently. When you're focused only on the short term, because become emotional. You make choices based on what feels good now, instead of what leads to good outcomes later. But discipline allows you to zoom out, to ask better questions. Will this choice bring me closer to or further from my vision? Am I solving a temporary problem at the cost of a permanent result? That kind of perspective isn't natural. It's developed through disciplined thinking and disciplined living. People who lead with long-term vision don't necessarily work harder. They work with more direction. Their time has a target. Their energy has a purpose. And when obstacles show up, which they always do, don't get thrown off course as easily. They've already anticipated difficulty. They've built a plan for the valleys, not just the peaks. That kind of resilience doesn't come from hoping everything goes right. It comes from building an emotional infrastructure to stay committed even when things go wrong. Discipline also helps you distinguish between urgency and importance. Not everything that demands your attention deserves it. Some things feel urgent but are actually distractions. Others are quiet. Without dissension, you'll always be at the mercy of whatever is loudest in the moment. But with discipline, you can focus on what actually matters. what supports your vision, even if it's not exciting right now. You're no longer chasing momentum. You're creating it one disciplined decision at a time, and most importantly, gives you peace. Not because things get easier, but because you stop living in a state of anxiety or what isn't happening fast enough. You begin to trust the process. You realize that as long as you're putting in the work, meaningful, aligned, consistent work, the results will come. Maybe not on your timeline, but on the timeline they were always meant to follow. And that trust allows you to stop comparing your journey to someone else's, because you know your vision is different and your pace is personal. There's a quiet relationship we rarely talk about, the one you have with yourself. It's not loud, it's not visible, and no one else gets to hear the conversations that happen there. But it's the most important relationship you'll ever have, because the way you treat yourself sets the tone for everything else in your life. And at the heart of that relationship, a powerful truth that you cannot truly respect yourself if you constantly break promises to yourself. Self-respect isn't something you stumble into. It's not built on external praise or validation. It's earned. And it's earned through self-discipline. Discipline is how we prove to ourselves that we matter. Not in a self-indulgent or egotistical way, but in a deep internal way that says, I am worth the effort. When you make a commitment to improve your health and you follow through even when it's inconvenient, you're telling yourself that your well-being is important. When you choose to study, to train, to wake up early to resist a harmful impulse, but because you said you would, you are reinforcing something powerful. You are someone who follows through. Every time you honor a personal commitment, no matter how small, you make a deposit in your self-respect, and those small deposits build a powerful influence over time. You start to trust yourself more. Stop second-guessing your ability to handle challenges. You begin to live with a sense of personal integrity, a sense that your actions are aligned with your values. And that alignment becomes your strength. It becomes a quiet confidence to be seen, but the kind that shows up in how you carry yourself, how you speak, who you eat, how you live. On the other hand, when you constantly break promises to yourself, something erodes, not just motivation, but identity. Every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, and don't, every time you commit to something and through halfway time you make excuses for why you didn't try, you send a message to yourself that your word doesn't hold weight, that you are negotiable, that your goals are optional. Over time, that creates an inner conflict. You start to feel disconnected from who you want to be. And that disconnection breeds frustration, anxiety, even shame, not because you're incapable, but because you stop being accountable to yourself. Self-discipline isn't about being harsh or rigid. It isn't about living without joy. It's about creating a framework in which joy, growth, and progress can thrive. It's about choosing discomfort now so you don't live with regret later. It's about showing up for yourself in the same way you'd show up for someone you care about. We often give others our best, our time, our energy, our consistency, but leave ourselves with whatever's left. Discipline flips that. It teaches you to treat yourself as someone worthy of investment, not someone you abandon the moment things get hard. There's something powerful about the feeling of doing hard things, not because you have to, but because you choose to. It gives you ownership. It gives you pride. And that pride is not the loud kind. It's not about ego or arrogance. It's the kind of pride that allows you to look in the mirror and say, I showed up, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And that is what builds real, lasting self-respect. Not the result, but the act of choosing your standards over your feelings. When you practice self-discipline, you begin to see setbacks differently. You stop internalizing them as signs of failure and start viewing them as opportunities to recommit. You recognize that perfection is not the goal, integrity is. You're not trying to be flawless. You're trying to be faithful to what matters. That perspective shift is critical, because without discipline, failure becomes a reason to quit. With discipline, failure becomes a reason to grow. That resilience is only possible when you've built a foundation of respect for yourself that doesn't crumble when things don't go according to plan. You also stop relying on other people to validate you. You don't need constant encouragement or applause to keep going, because you know what you've endured. And that internal knowing becomes your fuel. You stop looking for shortcuts. You stop comparing your journey. You stop chasing approval. Because self-respect gives you a quiet assurance that you're on the right path. Even if no one else sees it yet, you don't need the world to understand your discipline, because it's not for them, it's for you. And with that self-respect comes better boundaries. You start saying no to things that pull you off track. You stop tolerating relationships, habits, and environments that drain your energy. You begin to protect your time, your energy, your peace, not out of selfishness, but out of alignment with your values. And the more you protect what matters, the more you reinforce that you matter. The mind is the most powerful tool you have, but only if you know how to use it. Most people think of the mind as a natural gift, something fixed, something they either have control over or they don't. But the truth is, your mind is not a finished product. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, it can be trained It can be disciplined. It can be shaped. The difference between a person who breaks under pressure and one who rises, between someone who chases distractions and someone who pursues purpose, is not intelligence. It's not background. It's training. An untrained mind is reactive. It chases every impulse. It panics at uncertainty. It seeks comfort, validation, and escape. It looks for the path of least resistance. It avoids challenge because challenge feels like danger. But a trained mind, one shaped through discipline, doesn't run from resistance. It understands that struggle is part of growth. It knows that discomfort is not the enemy, but the invitation. A trained mind recognizes that temporary hardship often leads to long-term clarity, and it leans into that process even when it's hard. Training your mind begins with awareness. You cannot lead a mind you do not observe. Most people are so caught up in their own thoughts that they never pause to question them. They assume that just because a thought shows up, it must be true. That just because they feel doubt, they must be incapable. That just because they feel fear, they must avoid what's in front of them. But thoughts are not facts. Feelings are not orders. A trained mind knows the difference. A trained mind listens to thoughts but doesn't obey all of them. It evaluates. It filters. It questions. It leads. That kind of awareness isn't built overnight. It's forged through daily discipline. Discipline to pause before reacting. Discipline to respond with intention. Discipline to keep your standards even when your emotions try to lower them. You train your mind every time you choose structure over chaos, every time you choose reflection over reaction, every time you choose persistence over excuses. And these aren't grand decisions. They're subtle ones, quiet moments of self-control that most people will never see. But over time, those moments build the mental framework that allows you to stay calm under pressure, focused in distraction, and committed in uncertainty. A trained mind doesn't seek perfection. It seeks progress. It understands that failure is not a verdict, but feedback. That setbacks are not detours. They're part of the terrain. This mindset doesn't expect everything to be easy because it's not surprised when things are hard, it's ready. Not because it knew exactly what would happen, but because it trained for unpredictability. It rehearsed discipline. It practiced mental clarity. It prepared for chaos by becoming grounded in order. And the discipline of mental training extends to how you speak to yourself. Self-talk is not just motivational fluff, it's direction. The way you talk to yourself in difficult moments determines your ability to act. An untrained mind attacks itself. It labels mistakes as failures, challenges as impossibilities, and doubt as disqualification. But a trained mind speaks with clarity. It separates the event from the identity. It says, that didn't go well, instead of, I'm a failure. It says, this is hard, but I've done hard things before. Instead of, I can't do this, it becomes its own coach, not its own critic. Another mark of a trained mind is its ability to focus. We are constantly bombarded with noise, notifications, opinions, distractions. The average mind is overstimulated and underdirected. It's not a lack of intelligence that holds people back. It's the inability to focus attention and energy on what matters most. A trained mind knows how to say no. It knows how to filter. It knows that just because something is urgent doesn't mean it's important. Focus is not natural. It's a learned skill. And discipline is the practice that sharpens it. The most powerful minds also practice emotional regulation. They don't suppress emotion, they process it. They don't avoid fear, they examine it. They don't pretend to be unaffected, they choose not to be controlled. This isn't about being cold or detached, it's about being clear. When emotions rise, as they inevitably do, a trained mind doesn't let them steer the ship. It acknowledges them, but it doesn't surrender to them. It asks, what's the right thing to do now, rather than what feels easiest? And that ability to choose right over easy is what defines mental strength. Perhaps the most empowering truth about a trained mind is that it's available to anyone. It's not limited to a certain personality type, background, or education. It's not reserved for monks or Navy SEALs or CEOs. It's for anyone who is willing to train, willing to practice, willing to live with discipline even when it's hard, even when it's thankless, even when no one else understands why you're doing it. Because those who train their minds consistently become unshakable, not because the world gets easier, but because they become stronger within it. Discipline is not punishment. It's not sacrifice. It's not about suffering for the sake of toughness. Discipline is love, applied inward. It's the structure you build when you decide that your future is worth more than your comfort. It's the decision to become intentional with your time, your energy, your thoughts, and your actions. Discipline is not about forcing outcomes. It's about creating the conditions where growth becomes inevitable, where resilience becomes second nature, and where your identity is no longer left to chance. The truth is everyone wants to win, but not everyone wants to train like a winner. Everyone wants clarity, confidence, and control. But few are willing to earn it the slow way. And the slow way is the real way, because it's through discipline that you build not just results, but identity, not just success, but strength, not just goals, but greatness, the kind of greatness that lasts. You don't need to be the smartest, the strongest, or the fastest. But if you are disciplined, if you show up when it's hard, if you act with purpose when no one's watching, if you train your mind to focus when everything screams for distraction, then you've already won something most people never will. You've earned the mindset that makes all other wins possible. So don't wait for the right time. Don't wait for motivation. Start training now, because discipline is the architect of a winning mindset. And when you master that, there is no challenge you can't overcome, no goal too distant, no future out of reach.